You are used to hearing about various sections of income tax and that dreaded draconian legislation called FCRA and the usual Santa Claus bringing you CSR gifts, none of that really, but a little bit of all that will be woven in the form of discussion, where we are headed. So that's what today is all about. This event, in a way, is a precursor to CAP entering its 30th year in November. It's been a journey of 3 decades, and I must have been all of 26 when I joined CAP. I'm much grayer now. But there are stalwarts of CAP. Contrary to what people think that I'm some kind of a founder of CAP, no, forget it, I was employed. There were giants of that time who kind of gave me an appointment, and I miss all of them, today particularly. Our first chair was Mr. H.D. Parekh, the founder of HDFC. It was a great privilege to work with someone like that. But there were 3 people who were most active with CAP. One was Mr. Darius Forbes, who also chaired CAP for a long time. His daughter-in-law, Rati, now chairs CAP right now. He was a patron, he is a patron in the true sense of the word. Supported CAP, handheld, in every way. The other person was Mr. Rusi Lala, who was director of Dorabji Tata Trust for almost 18, 19 years. An amazing man. If some of you have read his books, you would know what sort of a man he was. And the third man was Mr. R.R. Chari, retired commissioner of income tax. If I know everything about income tax, it's only thanks to this man, who simplified income tax for me. Because everything that I had learned in law school was useless in this sector. Laws that we dealt with, such as Trust Act, FCRA, no one teaches that to you even today. It's something that you learn on the job. And so these are the founders of CAP, whose good wishes I invoke before we start the day today. And I'll speak a little more, but before that, I would like to invite our current chair, Mrs. Rati Forbes, to welcome you all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I didn't plan to make it such a noisy welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for your overwhelming response. It has been received by CAP to this conference. So as Noshir said, this is our way of welcoming our 30th year of being. And let me just go back a quick bit in history to tell you that 3 decades ago, CAP was conceived, and I'm quoting from Rusi Lala's book, simply as a center for philanthropy, which would facilitate the starting of trusts and provide information on the running of them. Staying true to this mandate, CAP has done this and much more, I'm sure you will agree. Apart from helping found new organizations, CAP continues to be a hugely credible and reliable source of information, advice, support, and assistance to all organizations through their life cycle working in this space. Additionally, CAP has undertaken path-breaking advocacy and policy work over the years, leading to a much more legally enabling environment. So as Noshir told you, CAP was established 30 years ago as a Section 25 not-for-profit company in 1986 by stalwarts such as the late H.D. Parekh, who was the founder of HDFC, Rusi Lala, the director of the Sir Dorabji Tata Trust and the author of many fine books, the late Mr. R.R. Chari, a former Commissioner of Income Tax, the late Ramu Pandit, then Secretary General of the Indian Merchants Chamber, and my father-in-law, Darius Forbes, who's the Chairman Emeritus of our group of companies, Forbes Marshall. As you can imagine, at the time when CAP was established, the landscape and focus of the social sector were very different. CAP's approach and raison d'etre was really path-breaking at that time, and today other organizations do occupy the same space. However, I really believe that CAP remains the preeminent go-to destination for accessible, reliable, and affordable information and advice, especially those located in the western part of our country at any stage in their existence. CAP has supported organizations of all sizes and has played a significant role in the formation and growth of many reputed names, some of whom are represented in the audience today. And as the sector has evolved, so has CAP too, in the current regulatory environment and in an age where funding agents are concerned about efficiency, credibility, and impact. CAP's continuing support in all of its core areas, including the extension of its capacity building programs and a more complete compliance advisory portfolio, ensures that it continues to remain, even today, the one-stop shop for all NGOs, NGOs, foundations, and social enterprises to turn to. The two challenges that we continually grapple with, and I'm sure you will sort of buy into those as well or understand them well coming from the sector, are number one, remaining relevant to the sector we serve. And that's why we have conferences like this, so that we can understand your needs, your expectations, and solicit feedback from you. And very importantly, we always look for sustained sources of funding to continue the work we do. It's hard for the average grant maker to understand that by investing in CAP, one is, in essence, investing in a more robust, compliant, knowledgeable, and empowered voluntary sector. We are optimistic on both scores, but these two continue to remain the challenge that we face. We hope that this conference will be filled with new learnings, new insights and thoughts, and many avenues of action for you when you go back to your organizations on Monday. Thank you very much for being here.
So, as per the schedule, I've been given the task to provide what is called the keynote address, whatever that means. Before I get into providing that 30 years journey, life was very simple back then. When I joined Center for Advancement of Philanthropy, the mandate given to me by the stalwarts of that time, who I looked up to, go forward and advance philanthropy. And I said, what does that mean? And we struggled until we found, when we started meeting NGOs, that what is it that they suffered most? And that was lack of understanding of legalities. As they say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. We are do-gooders. Oh, we didn't know this had to be done according to the Income Tax Act. Oh, did we really have to take FCRA registration? I thought that doesn't apply to us. That was the story that we heard whenever we met NGOs. And we started with simple things as bringing out resource books, doing one-off workshops, and God alone knows we did that for a long, long time. Until roughly about 5 years ago, when people like Rati and others came on our board and felt that instead of a knee-jerk reaction, we need to have a more robust program. But I'm a technical person. I'm not a strategist. I'm not a great planner. We needed somebody to do that. And even if you will look at today's conference, from planning to coordinating to marketing to everything that you will observe and see today, I would like to offer credit for that to my colleague and CAP's Chief Operating Officer, Meher. And to the inspiration and quiet support that Rati always has given to us. You know, you would, in our political circle, it's very easy to say women power and involve women. You want to see real women power? Yeah. And I believe that. And I'm not saying this just for any cheap applause. I mean it. So, having done that little bit, keynote address, compliance. What is compliance? Many of us think that if we keep our books of accounts properly, if we get our accounts audited every year, file our returns with various authorities, we are compliant. We are done. Is this all that's needed? Because that's only one aspect of compliance, which is fiscal compliance. But NGOs are required, and I ad nauseum say this at every forum I get an opportunity. It's far more complex to run a non-profit than a for-profit in this country. The plethora of laws that apply to you, the layers of legislation can be inundating. In fact, for people who come to me for registering new organizations, the first thing I do is throw a wet blanket. Forget the idea, don't add to the statistics. We already got 3.3 million in this country. That's the statistics, 3.3 million NGOs in this country, literally one for every 400 Indian. So compliance, what does it mean? Do we look beyond financial and be legally compliant? Well, that also is one component. Because everything that is legal still doesn't make you compliant enough. Many of you may be aware that once upon a time in the US, slavery was legal. I hope some of you know your history well. Slavery was legal. Apartheid in South Africa was legal. The Holocaust itself was legal. So legal ultimately is largely a matter of power. It's not about justice. And we in the NGO sector are here for social justice. And therefore compliance looks beyond legal and fiscal to good governance within the organization, without the organization, and good governance best practice across stakeholders. So just tick marking is not good enough. Anyone can be legally compliant. You know, we've been very serious, so let me tell you a little anecdote. It's slightly humorous. There was an old man in the United States, and he had 3 sons. And he invested a lot in their education, and they all did well for themselves. One became an engineer, one became an accountant, and one became a lawyer. The old man was on his deathbed, and he called his sons over from wherever they were all across the USA. And the children came. And the father said, "It's time for me to go from this world now. But I have a request. You may find this as a very strange request, but I want you to comply with that. You must be compliant. When I'm laid out in the coffin there, I'll be with my hands like this. And I want each of you to put a token $1,000 in my hand, close the coffin, and let me go." The son said, "Rather strange request." Anyway, after a few days, the old man died, and the 3 sons were right outside the grave, and there was a funeral ceremony going on. Well, very quietly, the engineer pulled out $1,000, put it in his father's hand, and said, "Father, this is compliant to your wishes." The accountant did likewise. The lawyer was smarter. He pulled out a checkbook. But he did even better. He didn't put a check there. He wrote out a check of $3,000 and took the $2,000 away as well. Compliance. They all were compliant. So compliance isn't about doing what the law wants you or somebody has told you to. compliance is about doing what is right. I'm reminded of an anecdote that late Rusi Lala told me, that once there was a major crisis at the House of Tatas, some major tax-related issues. And they had all the great geniuses of that time at Tatas, including Nani Palkhiwala and a whole battery of experts. And they worked on it, and finally in the boardroom, they presented it before the chairman, Mr. J.R.D. Tata. And they said, there, this is as per the law, this is what we can do. And J.R.D. was looking very pensive. And all he said was, this may be legally right, but is this the right thing to do? And that changed everything. So good governance is all about that. So basically, what do people do in countries outside of India on compliance? People outside the country have very low risk appetite. They have compliance committees in place. People have legal audits apart from fiscal audits. And why is there a need for legal audits? Because you catch the problem in time. Mayor will tell you more about that offering later on. But we've already done legal audits for a few organizations. And it's amazing how much got, as we say, a stitch in time saves 9. We can pull that out in time before they really get into trouble. So it's all about regulation. And so basically, if I were to, Tina has already held up that 2-minute reminder for me. So all I would say at this point is, basically compliance is about complying and doing what is right. There are only 2 things that you need to keep in mind with regard to compliance. Do what is right, and do what makes your organization and all stakeholders complete. Thank you very much.
Although Noshir has said it, I would like to start with thanks to Rati, because she has been one of our most engaged board members, most supportive board members, and I would like to acknowledge that today. Thank you, Rati. Noshir, thank you also. Over the last 1 year, I think like Noshir said, we made a lot of changes at CAP, and slowly but surely we've reached there. And it takes a lot to sort of let go of what you've held on to for 30 years. So thank you again for that as well. A little bit about why we are having this conference today. 2 reasons. One is that we are entering our 30th year. And the second one, which is a little more important, is that we are finally making our shift towards compliance. So for the longest time at CAP, we've had this debate of whether we are a one-stop shop or whether we are a place to go for legal compliance only. And I think last year, with the help of Deval of Dasra and his team, we went through a little exercise, and we finally figured we are about compliance. And compliance in more than just legal compliance. Through the day, we'll walk you through that. Just very quickly to let you all know, on your tables, there's a program book. In that, there's a bookmark, which tells you CAP's 4 areas of work. And if you look on the back side, there are 8 areas listed in bold. Those are the areas that CAP will be assisting in going forward from next year. We are working towards compliance reviews for the NGO sector, and that we'll be explaining to you as the day goes ahead.